3-year-old begs to go to office, says he died in a fire there in the 1970s. Asterisk. When 3-year-old Nathan Pierce first pointed to the towering glass building downtown and said, "That's where I worked before I got burned," his mother Rachel assumed he was simply repeating something he'd heard on television. But when their toddler began crying inconsolably every time they drove past the Meridian office complex, begging to go inside and speaking with the vocabulary of a grown man about the elevator that didn't work and the smoke that came from the ceiling, Rachel and her husband Mark realized they were witnessing something that challenged every assumption about childhood development. Nathan had never been inside an office building in his short life, yet he described the layout of floors, the location of emergency exits, and the daily routines of office workers with startling accuracy. When he began having nightmares about the fire that trapped us on the 17th floor, screaming about colleagues named Robert and Patricia who needed to be saved, his parents knew they were confronting a mystery that would lead them deep into the tragic history of their city and force them to question everything they thought they knew about memory, death, and the impossible ways the past can speak through the voices of children. Asterisk. If stories that blur the line between memory and mystery keep you awake at night, make sure to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you think you know about what children can remember. Part 1. The INCID at the morning of April 22, 2024, began routinely for the Pierce family in downtown Portland, Oregon. Rachel was driving 3-year-old Nathan to his daycare while Mark headed to his job at the local newspaper. The route took them past the Meridian office complex, a 30-story glass tower that had been part of the city's skyline since the 1960s and served as home to dozens of businesses and professional firms. Nathan sat in his car seat, playing with his toy dinosaurs and chattering about the cartoon he'd watched that morning. The toddler had always been talkative for his age, with a vocabulary that impressed his teachers and a curiosity that kept his parents constantly answering questions about the world around them. As they approached the intersection of 5th and High Morrison, where the Meridian building dominated the street corner, Nathan suddenly became quiet. Rachel glanced in her rearview mirror to see her son staring intently at the towering structure, his small face pressed against the car window. "Mama," Nathan said, his voice taking on an unusual seriousness, "that's where I worked before." Rachel smiled, assuming he was engaging in the type of imaginative play typical of preschoolers. "Oh, really? What kind of work did you do there, sweetheart?" "I had papers," Nathan replied, his vocabulary suddenly more sophisticated than his usual 3-year-old. "Speech patterns. Important papers for the insurance company. My desk was by the big window on the 17th floor." The specificity of his statement made Rachel pause. Nathan had never shown interest in offices or business concepts, and his reference to a specific floor number seemed oddly precise for a child who had recently learned to count to 20. "And what happened at your office?" Rachel asked, her tone still playful, but her attention now fully focused on her son's responses. Nathan's expression changed, becoming sad and fearful. "The fire came," he said quietly. "There was smoke everywhere, and we couldn't get out. The elevator was broken, and the stairs were too hot." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. Nathan's description wasn't delivered with the excitement typical of childhood storytelling, but with the somber tone of someone recounting a genuine trauma. "Who is we, Nathan?" she asked, pulling over to the curb so she could turn around and look at her son directly. "The people who worked there," Nathan replied, his small hands gesturing toward the building. "Robert from accounting, and Patricia, who answered the phones, and Mr. Johnson, the boss. We all got trapped when the fire started." The names came out naturally, as if Nathan were discussing familiar colleagues rather than imaginary characters. His eyes filled with tears as he continued speaking. I tried to help them, but the smoke was too thick. I couldn't breathe, and it was so hot. Then everything went dark. Rachel's hands were shaking as she reached back to comfort her son. Nathan, honey, that's just a story, right? You're making it up? Nathan shook his head emphatically. No, Mama. It really happened. I was there. I was big like Daddy, and I wore a suit to work every day. The conversation continued for several more minutes, with Nathan providing increasingly detailed descriptions of his supposed former life. He spoke of commuting to work, of meetings with clients, of coffee breaks with colleagues whose names he recited with casual familiarity. When Rachel asked how he knew these things, Nathan looked puzzled. I just remember, he said simply. From before, when I was Michael. The name Michael was delivered with such confidence that Rachel felt compelled to ask, Michael who? Michael Stevens, Nathan replied without hesitation. That was my name when I was big. By the time they reached the daycare, Nathan had returned to his normal preschooler behavior, chattering about his dinosaurs and asking about lunch. But Rachel's mind was reeling from what she had witnessed. Her 3-year-old son had just described what sounded like memories of adult life and traumatic death with emotional authenticity that seemed impossible for a child his age. That evening, when Mark returned from work, Rachel recounted the morning's conversation. Mark's initial reaction was skeptical. He suggested that Nathan had probably absorbed information from television shows or overheard adult conversations about office buildings and fires. But when they decided to test Nathan's claims by asking him more questions about his supposed memories, their son's responses were consistently detailed and emotionally authentic. He described the building's interior, the daily routines of office life, and the relationships between colleagues with the familiarity of someone who had actually lived the experience. The incident marked the beginning of a mystery that would consume the Pierce family and force them to confront questions about consciousness, memory, and the possibility that their 3-year-old son was carrying the authentic memories of a man who had died decades before Nathan was born. Part 2. ESTA Latio. Over the following weeks, Nathan's references to his life as Michael Stevens became a dominant theme in the Pierce household. What had begun as a single disturbing conversation evolved into daily episodes where their 3-year-old son would slip into the persona of an adult office worker describing memories of a life that had ended in tragedy. The episodes typically occurred when Nathan was tired or stressed, as if his defenses were down and the other personality could emerge more easily. He would suddenly stop playing with his toys and begin speaking in a more mature tone about work responsibilities and client meetings that no 3-year-old should understand. I need to finish the Morrison account, Nathan would say, his small face serious with adult concern. The deadline is Friday, and Patricia is waiting for the files. Rachel began documenting these episodes, filling a notebook with transcriptions of Nathan's statements. The level of detail was staggering. He described specific business procedures, office politics, and professional relationships with the complexity of someone who had actually worked in a corporate environment. Most disturbing were Nathan's descriptions of the fire that had supposedly ended Michael's life. The accounts were consistently traumatic, delivered with emotional intensity that was heartbreaking to witness in such a young child. The alarm kept ringing, but we couldn't get out, Nathan would say, tears streaming down his face. The hallway was full of smoke, and people were screaming. I tried to help Robert, but he couldn't walk. His leg was hurt from when the ceiling fell. The family's daily routines began to revolve around Nathan's episodes. Rachel would find herself comforting her son after these traumatic recollections, holding him while he sobbed about people who had died in a fire that had supposedly occurred before he was born. The escalation reached a concerning level when Nathan began expressing desperate urgency about returning to the Meridian building. He would beg his parents to take him there, insisting that he needed to check on the others and make sure everyone got out safely. "Please, Mama," he would plead, his 3-year-old voice carrying the weight of adult responsibility. "I have to go back. They're waiting for me. Robert and Patricia are still there." Mark initially resisted these requests, but Rachel began to wonder if visiting the building might provide some form of closure for whatever Nathan was experiencing. The child's distress was genuine, and his need to return to the supposed scene of his death seemed to be intensifying rather than fading. The first attempted visit to the Meridian building took place on May 15th, 2024. As they approached the entrance, Nathan became increasingly agitated, his small body trembling with what appeared to be a mixture of fear and anticipation. "It looks different," he said, studying the building's facade. "The windows are new, and the doors are in the wrong place." Rachel and Mark exchanged glances. The building had indeed been renovated multiple times since the 1970s, but Nathan had no way of knowing what it had looked like decades ago. When they entered the lobby, Nathan's reaction was immediate and intense. He began pointing to specific areas and describing how they used to look, his voice taking on the authoritative tone of someone who had been familiar with the space. "The elevator bank was over there," he said, pointing to an area that now housed a coffee shop, "and the security desk was right here, where they have the flowers now." The building's security guard, intrigued by the child's specific knowledge, confirmed that Nathan's descriptions matched the original layout of the lobby before the 1980s renovation. "That's exactly right," the guard said, looking puzzled. "The elevators were moved during the remodel, and the security desk was relocated to where the kid says it used to be." The escalation reached its peak when Nathan began having nightmares about the fire, waking up screaming about being trapped and unable to save his colleagues. Rachel and Mark would find their son drenched in sweat, crying about the smoke and heat with the terror of someone who had actually experienced the trauma. "I couldn't save them," Nathan would sob in the middle of the night. "I tried to help, but the fire was too big. Robert was calling for help, but I couldn't reach him." The nightmares were so intense that Rachel and Mark began sleeping in shifts, ensuring that one of them was always available to comfort Nathan when he woke up terrified. The family's life became consumed by their son's apparent memories of a traumatic death that had occurred decades before his birth date by June 2024. Nathan's Michael Stevens persona had become so dominant that he would correct people who called him by his own name. He would insist that he was Michael, that he had important work to do, and that he needed to return to the 17th floor to help his colleagues who are still trapped by the fire. Part 3. The Einvestigation faced with their son's increasingly detailed claims about his previous life as Michael Stevens. Rachel and Mark began researching the history of the Meridian office complex, hoping to find some logical explanation for Nathan's impossible knowledge of the building and its supposed tragic past. Rachel's background as a freelance journalist proved invaluable as she began investigating the building's history through city records, newspaper archives, and municipal documents. The Meridian office complex had been completed in 1968 and had housed numerous businesses over the decades, including several insurance companies that matched Nathan's descriptions of his workplace. Mark approached the research from a different angle, focusing on fire safety records and emergency response logs from the 1970s. He contacted the Portland Fire Bureau, requesting information about any significant fires that might have occurred in the Meridian building during that period. The breakthrough in their investigation came when Rachel discovered a reference to a fire at the Meridian building in the archived files of the Portland Tribune. The article, dated November 23, 1974, carried the headline, "7 Dead in Meridian Office Fire." The brief report described a fire that had started on the 17th floor and had trapped several employees, who were unable to escape due to elevator malfunctions and blocked stairwells. "Mark," Rachel called urgently, her voice shaking as she read from the computer screen. "Listen to this. The fire began in the electrical systems of the 17th floor, quickly spreading through the ceiling tiles and creating dense smoke. That prevented evacuation. 7 employees of Mutual Insurance Company died in the blaze, including several who were found near the elevator bank, apparently attempting to escape when the emergency systems failed." The article matched Nathan's descriptions with chilling accuracy. The fire had indeed occurred on the 17th floor. It had involved problems with the elevators, and it had trapped insurance company employees exactly as Nathan had described. Mark immediately contacted the Portland Fire Bureau to request detailed records of the 1974 fire. The official report, filed by Fire Chief Walter Morrison, provided additional information that validated Nathan's accounts. The fire had started during evening hours when most employees had gone home, but 7 people had been working late and had been trapped by the rapidly spreading smoke. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Rachel obtained the official list of victims from the 1974 fire. Among the 7 names was Michael Robert Stevens, age 34, an insurance adjuster who had been employed by Mutual Insurance Company. The report noted that Stevens had been found near the elevator bank on the 17th floor, apparently attempting to help other victims escape when he was overcome by smoke inhalation. "This is impossible," Mark said, staring at the victim list. "How can our 3-year-old son know the name of someone who died in a fire 50 years ago?" Rachel's continued research revealed additional details about Michael Stevens that matched Nathan's descriptions. Stevens had been unmarried, had worked in the insurance industry for 8 years, and had been known among his colleagues as someone who was always willing to help others. Coworkers interviewed after the fire had described him as dedicated and responsible, someone who would have tried to save others even at the cost of his own life. The investigation reached a new level when Rachel contacted the Portland City Archives to request employment records from Mutual Insurance Company. Among the documents she obtained was an employee roster from 1974 that included the names Robert Martinez, accounting department, and Patricia Williams, receptionist, the exact colleagues Nathan had mentioned in his accounts of the fire. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a historian at Portland State University who specialized in local industrial history, agreed to analyze the Pierce family's research. Her response was both fascinated and disturbed by the accuracy of Nathan's memories. "Your son is providing specific details about the 1974 Meridian fire that weren't included in the newspaper coverage," Dr. Mitchell explained during their consultation. "The names of the victims, the layout of the office, the specific details about the elevator malfunction. This information would only be available in official fire department records and insurance company files." Dr. Mitchell arranged for the family to meet with Harold Chun, a retired fire investigator who had been present during the 1974 emergency response. Chun was initially skeptical of the family's claims, but his attitude changed when Nathan began describing details of the fire that matched his own memories of the scene. "The boys' descriptions are remarkably accurate," Chun confirmed after spending an hour with Nathan. "He's describing the exact conditions we found when we arrived at the building. The smoke patterns, the location of the victims, the problems. With the emergency systems, everything matches what we documented in our reports." The investigation had revealed that Nathan's memories weren't just historically accurate. They were connected to a specific individual who had died in the Meridian building fire and whose story had been preserved in official records but largely forgotten by the general public. Part 4. The BREK. The most stunning validation of Nathan's claims came when Dr. Mitchell made a discovery that would fundamentally challenge everything the Pierce Family thought they understood about their son's experiences while researching the 1974 Meridian fire in the archives of the Mutual Insurance Company. She found a collection of personal documents that had been preserved by the company's legal department. Among these documents was Michael Stevens' personnel file, which contained details about his life and work that matched Nathan's descriptions with extraordinary precision. The file indicated that Stevens had been a claims adjuster specializing in commercial property insurance, had worked closely with colleagues in the accounting department, and had been known for staying late to help complete urgent projects. Remarkably, the file contained a handwritten note from Stevens' supervisor, dated just 1 week before the fire. Michael continues to demonstrate exceptional dedication to his clients and colleagues. His willingness to work overtime and assist other departments has been particularly valuable during our recent staffing shortage. Dr. Mitchell's most significant discovery came when she found a collection of interoffice memos written by Michael Stevens in the months leading up to the fire. The documents revealed Stevens' concerns about the building's emergency systems and his observations about safety issues that had been largely ignored by management. In a memo dated October 15, 1974, just 5 weeks before the fire, Stevens had written, "I am concerned about the elevator system's reliability during emergency situations. Yesterday's power fluctuation caused a 30-minute delay in elevator service, and I worry about our ability to evacuate quickly if necessary." The memo continued, "I have also noticed that the emergency lighting in the stairwells is inadequate, and the fire exits on the 17th floor are partially blocked by filing cabinets. I recommend that we address these issues before they become serious safety hazards." When Dr. Mitchell showed these documents to the Pierce family, Nathan's reaction was immediate and emotional. He looked at Michael Stevens' handwriting and began to cry, reaching toward the papers with recognition. "That's my writing," he said, his 3-year-old voice trembling with emotion. "I wrote those papers to try to keep everyone safe." The breakthrough reached its climax when Dr. Mitchell discovered a photograph in Michael Stevens' personnel file. The image showed a man in his 30s, wearing a business suit and standing beside a desk in what appeared to be an office setting. When Nathan saw the photograph, his response was profound and undeniable. "That's me," he whispered, pointing to the image. "That's when I was big. That's my desk where I worked on the insurance papers." The photograph showed Michael Stevens standing in front of a window, and Nathan immediately identified specific details about the view and the office layout that were consistent with his previous descriptions of his workspace. Dr. Mitchell's continued. Research revealed that Michael Stevens had indeed been found near the elevator bank on the 17th floor, exactly as Nathan had described. The fire department report indicated that Stevens had been attempting to help Robert Martinez, who had been injured by falling debris. When both men were overcome by smoke, the final piece of evidence came when Dr. Mitchell obtained a recording of the emergency dispatch calls from the night of the fire. Among the transmissions was a report from a firefighter who had found Stevens' body. "We have a male victim near the elevator bank. Appears to have been trying to assist another victim when overcome by smoke. No identification found on scene." The convergence of historical documentation, personal artifacts, and Nathan's detailed memories created compelling evidence that the 3-year-old possessed authentic knowledge of Michael Stevens' life, work, and death. The investigation had revealed that Nathan's memories weren't just accurate. They were the actual experiences of a man who had died trying to save his colleagues in the 1974 Meridian fire. Dr. Mitchell arranged for the Pierce family to meet with Patricia Williams, the former Mutual Insurance receptionist who had survived the fire by leaving work early that evening. Williams, now in her 70s, was initially skeptical of the family's claims, but her attitude changed when Nathan began describing details about the office and their working relationship that only Michael Stevens would have known. "Michael was always so kind to me," Williams said, tears streaming down her face as she spoke with Nathan. He would bring me coffee every morning and always asked about my family. He was the type of person who would have tried to save everyone, even if it meant he couldn't save himself. The breakthrough had provided undeniable validation of Nathan's extraordinary claims about his previous life as Michael Stevens, creating a case that challenged conventional understanding of consciousness, memory, and the possibility of life after death. Part 5. The Sione Farun Tion, the story of Nathan Pierce and his claims about being Michael Stevens in a previous life gained national attention when Dr. Mitchell presented the case at the American Historical Association's annual conference in October 2024. The presentation, titled Historical Memory and Child Consciousness, the Michael Stevens case, sparked immediate controversy and attracted prominent skeptics from multiple academic disciplines. Dr. James Morrison, a leading child psychologist from Stanford University, publicly challenged the findings in a series of media interviews and academic papers. We're being asked to accept that a 3-year-old has access to the memories of a man who died 50 years ago, he argued. The more reasonable explanation is that the child has been exposed to historical information through media sources or has developed an elaborate fantasy based on overheard conversations. The controversy intensified when Dr. Morrison arrived in Portland with a team of specialists to conduct what he called rigorous scientific testing of Nathan's claims. The team included Dr. Lisa Chun, a neuropsychologist specializing in childhood development, and Dr. Robert Martinez, an expert in false memory formation, who had studied cases of supposed past life memories in children. The confrontation took place at the Pierce family home on November 8, 2024. With extensive documentation to ensure scientific validity, Dr. Morrison approached the investigation with obvious skepticism, immediately questioning the methodology of the previous research and the possibility of contamination in Nathan's environment. Children are remarkably skilled at absorbing information from their surroundings, Dr. Morrison explained to the family. Television programs, internet content, adult conversations, all can contribute to elaborate fantasy narratives that appear to demonstrate impossible knowledge. The skeptical team began by conducting a thorough examination of the Pierce home, searching for any materials that might have exposed Nathan to information about the 1974 fire or Michael Stevens. They analyzed the family's media consumption, internet browsing history, and personal library, looking for sources that could explain Nathan's detailed knowledge. Their investigation revealed minimal exposure to relevant historical content. The family owned no books about Portland history. Their internet usage showed no searches related to the Meridian building or the 1974 fire, and their television viewing consisted primarily of children's programming and contemporary news. Dr. Chun then conducted neurological assessments to determine whether Nathan's brain showed any abnormalities that might explain his unusual experiences. The results were within normal parameters for a 3-year-old, showing no signs of neurological conditions that could account for his detailed memories. The confrontation intensified when Dr. Morrison decided to test Nathan's knowledge using a combination of accurate historical information and deliberate fabrications. He presented the child with details about the 1974 fire, mixing true facts with false claims to determine whether Nathan would accept suggestions or correct inaccuracies. Nathan's responses impressed even the skeptical team. He consistently rejected false information about the fire, correcting Dr. Morrison's fabrications with the confidence of someone who had actually experienced the events. "The fire didn't start in the basement," Nathan said, his 3-year-old voice carrying surprising authority. "It started on my floor, in the ceiling where the wires were. And there weren't 10 people who died, there were 7. The most traumatic moment came when Dr. Morrison challenged Nathan directly about his identity. "Nathan, You are a little boy. You are not Michael Stevens. Michael Stevens died a long time ago, before you were born." Nathan's reaction was immediate and profound. He began to cry with the deep, existential grief of someone confronting the reality of their own death. His small body shook with sobs as he spoke in a voice that seemed far too mature for his age. "I know I died," he said through his tears. No, I couldn't save them all. But I'm still here, and I remember everything. I remember Robert falling, and Patricia being scared, and the smoke getting thicker and thicker." The intensity of Nathan's emotional response affected everyone in the room. Dr. Martinez, who had remained professionally detached throughout the investigation, found himself moved by the child's obvious distress. This level of emotional authenticity is extremely difficult to fabricate, he admitted. The child's grief appears genuine, and his knowledge of historical details is remarkably accurate. While I maintain skepticism about supernatural explanations, I must acknowledge that conventional theories don't adequately explain what we're observing. The confrontation reached its climax when Dr. Morrison arranged for Nathan to meet with Harold Chun, the retired fire investigator, under controlled conditions. Chun presented Nathan with photographs from the 1974 fire scene and asked him to identify specific details that only someone present during the emergency would know. Nathan's responses were consistently accurate. He identified the location of victims, described the smoke patterns, and pointed out structural damage that was visible in the photographs, but hadn't been included in public reports about the fire. "The boy's knowledge is extraordinary," Chun confirmed. "He's describing details that were only documented in our confidential investigation reports. I can't explain how he knows these things, but his information is absolutely accurate." The confrontation concluded with Dr. Morrison's reluctant acknowledgement that Nathan's case presented genuine anomalies that challenged conventional understanding of childhood psychology and memory formation. While I cannot accept claims of reincarnation or consciousness survival, I must admit that this child's knowledge and emotional responses are remarkable, he said in his final statement. The case deserves continued study, even if we cannot provide satisfactory explanations for the phenomena we've observed. Part 6. The AF Terma today. Nathan Pierce is 5 years old, a thoughtful kindergartner who has learned to navigate between his contemporary identity and the persistent memories of his life as Michael Stevens. The intense episodes of accessing Michael's memories have become less frequent but remain emotionally significant, serving as a bridge between past and present that continues to shape his understanding of life and death. Rachel reports that Nathan's Michael episodes have evolved into more manageable experiences. He still remembers everything, she explains, but he's learned to live with both identities. He knows he's Nathan now, but he also knows he was Michael before, and he carries that responsibility with him. The family has worked with Dr. Elizabeth Foster, a child psychologist who specializes in unusual childhood experiences, to help Nathan develop healthy coping mechanisms for his dual memories. Dr. Foster has documented Nathan's case as part of her research into consciousness and identity development in children. Nathan represents a unique case of what appears to be authentic memory retention across lives, Dr. Foster wrote in her 2024 study. His ability to access detailed information about a specific individual who died before his birth challenges our understanding of consciousness and personal identity. Nathan's connection to Michael Stevens has had a profound impact on his personality and worldview. Despite his young age, he demonstrates an unusual level of empathy and concern for others, often expressing worry about people's safety and well-being in ways that seem mature beyond his years. He's always been very protective of others, Rachel observes. If someone gets hurt at school, Nathan is the first one to help. It's like he learned from Michael's experience that you have to take care of people, even if it's dangerous. The family has maintained contact with Patricia Williams, the former mutual insurance receptionist who survived the 1974 fire. Williams has become something of a grandmother figure to Nathan, helping him understand Michael's life and providing comfort when he struggles with memories of the tragedy. It's remarkable to see Michael's kindness living on in this child, Williams says. Nathan has the same gentle spirit, the same concern for others. It's like Michael's best qualities have been preserved. Dr. Mitchell continues to research the 1974 Meridian fire, using Nathan's memories to guide her historical investigations. The child's recollections have led to new discoveries about the fire's causes and the heroic actions of the victims that weren't documented in official reports. Nathan has provided insights into the human experience of the fire that we couldn't have obtained from official records alone, Dr. Mitchell explains. His memories have helped us understand not just what happened, but how it felt to be there. The Meridian Office Complex has established a small memorial plaque in its lobby honoring the victims of the 1974 fire, including Michael Stevens. Nathan visits the memorial occasionally, standing quietly before the plaque with a solemnity that seems remarkable for a 5-year-old. "I like to make sure they're remembered," Nathan told his parents during a recent visit. Michael would want people to know that Robert and Patricia and all the others were good people who didn't deserve to die. The scientific community continues to study Nathan's case, with researchers from multiple disciplines attempting to understand the nature of his memories and their implications for our understanding of consciousness and identity. The Institute for Consciousness Studies has documented his case alongside similar instances of apparent past life memories in children. Other families have reached out to share their own experiences with children who claim to remember previous lives. The Pierce family has become part of a support network for parents navigating similar mysteries, offering guidance and understanding to those whose children carry memories that shouldn't exist. Nathan himself has developed a sophisticated understanding of his unique situation. He speaks of Michael as both himself and as someone else, acknowledging the complexity of carrying two sets of memories and experiences. "Michael is inside me," Nathan explained to researchers during a recent interview. "He's not gone, but he's not exactly here either. He helps me remember to be kind to people and to try to keep them safe." The family has learned to embrace the profound questions raised by Nathan's experiences while focusing on his continued development and well-being. They've created a home environment that honors both his contemporary identity and his connection to Michael's memories. "We stopped trying to explain why this happened," Mark reflects. "Instead, we focus on helping Nathan use his experiences to become a good person. Whether it's reincarnation, consciousness survival, or something else entirely, the important thing is that Nathan is learning valuable lessons about courage, compassion, and helping others." Nathan continues to grow and develop as both a normal child and a keeper of Michael Stevens' memory. His story has become a testament to the enduring nature of human consciousness and the ways that love and sacrifice can transcend the boundaries of individual lifetimes. His experiences have brought historical figures to life, ensuring that the victims of the 1974 Meridian fire are not forgotten and that their stories continue to inspire others. Nathan's journey has provided comfort to families dealing with similar phenomena and has contributed to a growing understanding of the complex relationship between consciousness, memory, and identity. The mystery of Nathan's dual memories remains unsolved, but his journey has demonstrated that some experiences are too powerful to be erased by death, and that sometimes the most profound truths about life and love can be found in the innocent voices of children who remember things they should not know. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Nathan's story isn't the mystery of how he carries Michael's memories, but the possibility that acts of selfless courage create ripples in the fabric of consciousness itself, that somewhere in the deepest layers of existence, the choice to help others, even at the cost of one's own life, becomes a kind of immortality, waiting to be reborn in the hearts of those who are meant to carry forward the light of compassion into a world that desperately needs to remember what it means to truly care for one another.